Hey there YouTube, welcome to another Tech Me Out video. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will be notified when new videos come out. In today's video, we'll take a look at how we can scale up the security of our home networks using our UDM or UDM Pro devices. We are shooting this video in December 2020, and just this month we've heard about major companies being hacked. Companies like SolarWinds, FireEye, Microsoft, several US government agencies. Nobody is immune. So I thought to myself, this will be a good time to create a video that might help anyone scale up the security of their home networks, even if it's just by a little bit. So in this video, we will walk through the new settings menu in our UDM Pro device. This is the new settings menu. Ubiquiti is paving the way for us to go. This is their new design language, so this is where we will go. We will take a look at IPS settings. We will take a look at how to assign security policies to our home networks. If we have several networks or VLANs, we can assign different policies to different VLANs, which is very handy. And we will also take a look at what is sort of a web filtering feature, because I'm calling it a sort of a web filtering feature because we can't really type a URL and start blocking it, but we can pick and choose from a list Ubiquiti is offering us. And for most of my testings, it works very well. We can block, for example, just Facebook, or we can block a category of social networks, which is great. It works fine. And it's very useful, at least in my scenario. So without further ado, let's go over to the computer and walk over the security features and see how to utilize them. Join me. Alright guys, so we are at the computer, and before we dive right into the technical stuff, we have to remember a few things. One is that whatever we do, we will not be able to reach 100% security. That's just not a feasible expectation. The second thing, we can't make mistakes in the most basic stuff. We need to cover all our bases, and we need to make sure that we do not make the lives of the hackers too easy. For example, if you have a flat network and you have your computers and your IoT devices on the same networks, that's a basic mistake. So this video is building on the assumption that you already have a functioning home network that is already segregated into different VLANs. If you're not, we will do in the future a video about creating a proper network, whether if it's a home office or home network with proper segregation and firewall rules. That's a topic on its own. So we will build upon the assumption you already have that covered, and we'll jump right into our UDM Pro device and log in. As I said, we are going to do everything with the new settings menu. This is where Ubiquiti wants us to go. This is their design language, and this is where we will go. So all our new security features will be in the new settings. And the first thing I want to cover is assigning security policies onto your existing networks. So to do that, we'll jump right into the settings and go to the networks tab right here. I'll choose my IoT network just as an example, but if you click on Edit, you will see that in the new settings menu, you have content filtering. So here you can assign work or family or none. Let's, for example, say that we want the family content filtering. We will block VPNs, explicit, which I don't really know what they mean, pornographic and malicious domains, and all search engines and YouTube will automatically be set into safe mode. That's excellent. That's something that we didn't have, at least as home users. We didn't have access to this kind of content filtering. I think the first vendor to provide such a capability was Sophos with their XG firewall that they gave to home users for free. But now we have it in our UniFi ecosystem, and that's great. And the most flexible thing is that we can assign the family content filtering to our IoT network and the different, let's say, work content filtering policies to our client's network. So we have that flexibility. So this is the first layer of security we can assign on a few clicks to our home networks, and frankly, I don't see any reason not to enable any one of these policies on your home network. But it might not be enough, and we will jump in our last part of our video into the sort of web filtering, and we'll see how we can tighten even more the security on our internet users. So that's our first stop on this video. The second thing is, that I want to cover is the whole IPS and all satellite features in our UDM. Now, if you have this turned off and you have a UDM or UDM Pro, I can guarantee that you can safely turn that feature on and not suffer any penalty in regards to internet bandwidth. Now, if you have a UDM-Base, you can enable this feature, and the UDM will be able to handle up to 850 megabits down in your ISP connection. For example, I have a fiber to the home. I have 500 down and 50 up. If I was running with a UDM, I wouldn't suffer any penalty in regards to my internet speed. I have a UDM Pro, and the UDM, I think it's up to 3 gigabytes of per second of internet bandwidth. So amazing capabilities. The UDM lineup is really built to enable security features, unlike the USGs that were a little bit struggling. So we have turned that internet threat management on, and now we have to choose, do we want only the detection system or the prevention system? The differences are very minor but critical. Intrusion detection will only alert you that something is going on. Intrusion prevention will also block the traffic that the UDM deems as suspicious. So definitely go for the IPS and not the IDS. And once we've chosen one of the two, we can choose any one of the 5 pre-configured policies that Ubiquiti has created for us. But what I did, I opened this plus button over here, and I chose for myself what I want to block and what I don't want to block. For example, for me, I kept P2P on because I am using it on some occasions. So you can choose either the predefined policies, or you can select individual categories on what to block and what to leave unfiltered. So it's important to know that. And that is actually the second layer that we can enable on our UDM devices, which is great. It's something that up until a few months ago or a year, it was something that was out of the reach for UniFi users. Before the UDM, the USG lineup was very, let's say, unable to carry this load. So moving on, we have the network scanners. And the network scanners have 2 sub features: the threat scanner, which I will show you exactly what it does, and the internal honeypot, which creates some sort of a soft spot in your network. It creates some sort of a virtual client or a virtual host, and it lets you see who is trying to hack you and how. I have not tested it, so I can't really say anything about it. But if you enable the threat scanner, what you will see in the in the threat management section of the UDM is in this section, in this tab right here, endpoint scans. The endpoint scanner goes and scans your network, and when it finds any IP address that replies or looks like it's alive, it will also tell you what is the operating system that the scanner identified and how many ports this endpoint has open. And of course you can dive deeper into what ports, and then you can see actually it's a very good sanity check to see that your clients are, let's say, not healthy but secure as you imagine them. If you at some point see that here, for example, is my Synology backup device, 17 ports for me seems a little high. So I can see right here, port by port, what's open, and then I can do a little research on what is this port, why is it open, is it okay, is it not okay. It really gives you something to start your investigations or health checks internally. Great feature, I really like it. Moving back to our security tab and moving on, we were here, and firewall. Firewall is its own, let's say, entity. It deserves a video on its own, and I will dedicate a video on creating networks and how to segregate them and how to create firewall rules to manage the traffic between them. One thing that I want to say on the firewall topic, without taking too much time from this video, is if you have several VLANs like I do, definitely go and create and block inter-VLAN routing. In a nutshell, it's blocking all the internal traffic between all your VLANs, and then only create rules to allow specific traffic on specific ports in and out of your internal VLANs. For example, I'm allowing traffic from my IoT network internally to my Plex servers, only on the Plex port. So this is how I manage or pinpoint what traffic goes in and out. Only the traffic that I'm saying it's okay will go in and out. That's it about firewall. In advanced, we have two options that I don't see any reason to leave off. It's restrict access to malicious IP addresses. Really, I don't see any reason to leave that off. And restrict access to Tor. For me, for example, I don't use Tor, and I don't expect receiving any traffic from Tor services. So for me, it's an easy enabling of this feature. Okay, so we have covered security policies and assigning them to our VLANs or networks. We have covered IPS and other threat management features. And now I want to talk about what I called the sort of web filtering, and you will see exactly what I mean. We'll go to this second line here, traffic and device identification. And here we'll expand restriction definitions. Now, I have this test I did from earlier today. I'm going to remove it, just so we will start off fresh and clean. And let's say I want to block for one of my VLANs the ability to access, for example, Facebook. I don't care about any other social network, but Facebook bothers me and I want to block it. What I'll have to do is go here and click on add restriction group. I'll call it TMO test 2. And now we only created an entity that's called restriction group, but it's empty. Into this restriction group, we'll have to define our restrictions, and we'll do that by by selecting it and clicking on Add Restriction. Here we can select entire categories that are predefined for us by Ubiquiti. I'm pretty sure that they are getting these lists from a third-party security vendor, but it doesn't matter for us. We can search for social networks, very easy and convenient. And from here we can search for Facebook and we'll select that. By the way, we can select multiple entities inside this list, but we only focusing on Facebook. So Facebook is selected, and now we want to select block traffic, otherwise it will just report it or log it. I'm going to log events, and I also want to enable this restriction. The enabling or disabling the restriction is actually very handy, because sometimes we want to block a certain application or a certain website, and we want to, for example, for testing purposes, just to temporarily allow it, so we don't have to delete the restriction and recreate it. We can disable it and enable it again when we want to go back to blocking it. So we have all our settings defined here, and I'll click on Add Restriction. So now we have the restriction entity created and configured. What we need to do now is to attach this restriction to any one of our networks or our Wi-Fi networks. So we'll expand the restriction assignments. We'll select network restriction. As you can see, we can assign it only to a Wi-Fi network or only to a wired network. In my example, I'll go to a wired network and I'll click on Assign Restriction to Network. I'll select my network, in this case it's IoT, and I'll select my newly created restriction group, which is TMO Test 2. And just for the fun of it, I'll also attach it to my client's network, which I'm connected to right now. Now, this feature has worked for me, I think, about 8 times out of 10. For the other two, I don't know why, it just didn't seem to take. Maybe I needed to wait a little longer. It does take 1 or 2 minutes until it takes effect, but maybe if I waited a little more, it would have worked. Now, we have waited enough. Let's go into our vSphere environment and power on our test machine. Oh, sorry. And until this machine loads up, let's open a new incognito tab, and we are on the client's VLAN on my network, and let's try to go to facebook.com and see if it loads or not. As we can see, seems like the blocking of Facebook has taken place. Let's try our virtual machine. The virtual machine is connected to the IoT network. And let's verify that Facebook is blocked here as well. And looks like that indeed Facebook is blocked, but as a sanity check, I want to now disable my restriction, and I want to see if Facebook suddenly loads up. Let's do it. Let's go to our UDM device again. Let's click on our restriction group right here and expand the plus button. This is our Facebook restriction, and click on Edit. And now I will disable this restriction, go back to our virtual machine, and in a matter of seconds Facebook now loads. That means that indeed the reason Facebook did not load is not any issues on the Facebook servers. It's indeed our restriction that was blocking Facebook. That's great. It's something that was not available for us UniFi users. I think that only in the latest version of the controller firmware version 1.8.3, which came with controller version 6.0.41 if I'm not mistaken. I think that before that this feature was unavailable. I'm not sure, but I'll have to check. So this is how we enable some more security on our networks. It's not 100%, it's not enterprise grade maybe level of security with layers and layers and layers, but it's something. We need to cover our bases and we need to not make mistakes on the basics. So this will help us just crank up our security just a little bit. So guys, if you think that I did something wrong, if I forgot something, if there is something that you would like to maybe teach me, I would love it if you'll take a 30-second or a minute and write a comment in the comment section below. I really like hearing from you and reading your comments. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will be notified when new videos come out. Thank you so much for being with me today, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye guys.